Welcome back to JP's Budget Collecting and our weekly look back at the CBSI Hot Top 10 list from 6 months ago. This week we're going to be looking back at the list from February 1st, 2019, and I'm recording this on July 31st, 2019. As always, those dates are just so you know when this information was the most relevant, because things do change and can change rapidly sometimes depending on what's going on out there. As always, this list is about trying to understand what books were hot, why they were hot, and why they may or may not have stayed hot, so that we can all make smarter decisions in our collecting choices, particularly when it comes to hot books. So, up first at number 10 is Huck #1. This book hit the list because there was news that Netflix had optioned it for a potential show. We all know option doesn't mean that the show's coming. It just means that they now have the ability to make one if they decide to. Back then, it jumped from a $1 bin book to a $10 to $15 book. So it didn't really go to any kind of extreme heights. $10 to $15, that's still not anything too outrageous for any kind of #1. Now this book is back down just a little bit. It's a $5 to $10 book, so probably could be found in dollar bins again, maybe. 9.8 went for 75 to 100, but only one of the there was one sale in April, and before that it was February, which is back when this news was coming out. So really hasn't been much movement on slabs for this particular book. The only one currently listed is listed at 100. So that is Huck #1. At number 9 on our list is Solo #4, the Yasmin Putri 1 in 25 variant. If you've been watching this list for a while, you've known that these 1 in 25 Star Wars variants have been very popular. Several of them have hit the list. And for the most part, more often than not, they maintain quite a bit of value just because Star Wars collectors appear to really want them, really like them, and they continue to go after them. This one is no different. There's nothing really special about this book other than it was a relatively low print, a 1 in 25 with a nice cover. Back then it was going for $50 the week of release for 1 in 25, which is darn good. Now it is a $10 plus shipping book. This is actually a rare on the rare side in that it's a Star Wars book like this that did not maintain value. So, and I couldn't find any slab sales of this book. Interestingly enough, I say it's been going for $10 plus shipping. It appears to be one seller continues to sell it for $10. There's currently a listing from the same seller for $9.95 plus shipping, and he's been selling a bunch of these. All the other listings are in the $35 to $50 range, and of course none of those are selling because this guy apparently has several and he's willing to sell them for $10. So that is what's kind of going on there. So it would be interesting to see if the value comes back on this one eventually. But for now, it is basically because there's somebody willing to put them out there for $10. It's a $10 book. And number 8 on the list is Batman: The Red Death #1. And this has basically hit the list because Red Death was teased as the villain for the Flash TV series. It jumped to a $30 book back then. Now this book is come back to a kind of in between where it was before this news, but and where it was after the news. Right now it's a $15 to $20 book, fairly consistently. So it has a little bit of value, but just not as much as at that peak when the news first came out. 9.8 on this one. There's only 2 sales that I could find in 2019. There were a few sales back in 2018, but only 2 sales in 2019. One was 70 and one was for 110. But the last of those, again, was back in March. So no 9.8s on this have sold anytime recently. All the listings are asking 100 plus for this particular book at a 9.8. I think you just gotta, this is a book you're interested in, if you're interested in these Dark Knight Smells books, this is one I would just shop around on. My guess is you could probably get it for $10 to $15 on that low end, rather than paying close to 20 or even 100 for a slab. So, number 7 on the list is, I said last week we were entering into the peak of the Immortal Hulk craziness. It is officially here on the list. we have Immortal Hulk number 2. This is, like I said, this is when that Hulk train really started going. This book jumped from, it had dropped actually prior to this down to a $10 to $15 book, and then it took off to $30 to $40. Now, obviously, it's at $60 to $75, so this book has kept going. It's actually went higher than this and come back a little bit to be going for $60 to $70. Currently, though, all the asking prices for Immortal Hulk number 2 are in the $85 to $100 range. So, again, like I said, which is about where it peaked at. It's not quite going for that peak value anymore, but $60 to $70 for this book is still pretty impressive for the first appearance of a character from an old TV show that really hasn't shown up again in the actual Immortal Hulk series. So it'll be interesting to see what they do with Dr. Fry in the future. Still a little surprised that this one has carried the value that it does. Nostalgia for things from the past, I guess, is really driving the price on this one. And it was a pretty low print run early on for Immortal Hulk. So that is number 2. I had a feeling we're going to see it a couple more times in the upcoming weeks, along with some other Immortal Hulk books. And number 6 on the list is Black Canary, Oracle, Birds of Prey number 1. This is a book that I would like to have a copy of, but do not. And this basically hit the list because of movie tease from Margot Robbie for the new Harley Quinn Birds of Prey movie. Is what caused this book to hit the list. This is, of course, the first appearance of the Birds of Prey. Back then, 9.8 went for a record of $400. Since then, the book actually went a little bit higher than that and peaked almost at $500. But since the peak, it's been basically a $200-ish book. It has come back quite a bit for 9.8. The last 3 9.8 sales, though, have been going back actually in the upward direction. They've been 290, and then 370. Although actually we had one, that's not true. And then one additional sale just went off this week. Was a best offer was accepted on $300. So that one was back under at least the $300 range. For the most part, this has been, in recent months, $200 to $250 book. But there has been some sales here recently, more closer to $300 or more. This is a book I think I would just continue to shop around on. No trailer has come yet. If you really want it, I would either shop around and try to get something before the trailer drops. Unless the trailer turns out to be bad, which with DC you never know. But if you could get it before the trailer drops, that's probably best. Otherwise, you might be better off waiting until after the movie comes and goes. Just my thoughts on chasing this first appearance of the Birds of Prey. Raw copies for this book are going in the $35 to $60 range, so fairly attainable if you really want one. Obviously, that varies a little bit on condition. With that, let's move into the top 5 of this week's list. At number 5, we have Stumptown number 1, and this is made the list because ABC had actually picked this up as a potential series. Back then, it went from a $1 bin to a $20+ book. It would actually later peak at a $40 to $60 book. I don't know if it makes the list again or not, but I do know that I saw values were clear up to $40 to $60. Now this book is back down to a $20 to $30 book. Although most of the people, but there's been very few sales, period. And most of the listings are still asking basically 55 plus for raw copies of this. I couldn't find any slab sales of this book. So yeah, it peaked up there in the $40 to $60 range. People are still asking in that range, but it has already slid back down, and there hasn't been very many sales because it's basically settled in as a $20 to $30 book. It might peak again if we get further development in this being a series. And number 4 on the list is the 100-page DC Giant, The Primal Age. This was a Target exclusive. And this immediately was going for $15 plus, because I guess not all Targets got it. It was a little bit tough to get. Other than that, I don't think there's anything special about this book, other than it was a Target book, and a Target exclusive. You don't really see that. Now it is a $5 to $10 book. Although occasionally it's still going for $15 or more. 9/8 though are only going for about $60. So that is, there's really not much else to say about this book. It's kind of, there was nothing really special about it other than it was that Target exclusive, and it's kind of fallen back to a $5 to $10 book, which is about what cover was on this one. I think it was like a $7.99 or something, 100-page giant. So not really carrying much value. At number 3 on the list, we have Straightjacket number 1, and once again, option news rules the day. So what is that, our third option news book, plus a couple other rumors. So we've been all over that this week. Back then, it jumped up to a $20 to $30 book. Now it is back down to a $10 to $15 book. Although there's very few sales of this one again in the last couple of months, and that's because people are actually asking $50 to $100 for this book. Like some of these I looked into and saw that they'd actually peaked higher than the value that was on here. Like this one was listed at $20 to $30. And then some of these other books had peaked higher than that. So I looked to see if this one had actually gotten to $50 to $100 to justify the current listing prices. And best I could tell, about $30, $35 is as high as it's ever got. And yet people are still asking $50 to $100. So again, just because they're asking it doesn't mean you need to pay it. This is a book that, when it does sell, is going for $10 to $15. I definitely wouldn't pay $50 for this book. So that was Straightjacket number 1. Excuse me. And number 2 on our list is Spawn 293, the cover C. And this was the Air version that came out, which was supposed to be all black and white cover and interior. And it had some color or partially colored pages in it. So everyone went crazy because it was an Air and it was replaced. But the thing was, they replaced it, but they didn't recall it. So they didn't pull any of the copies that had the color Air back. They just left them out there and then sent replacements. So I'm not sure why this book jumped, given that it wasn't really a limited Air in any way, shape, or form. But it did. It jumped all the way up to $25 to $30. Now it has come back to $10 to $20 for raw copies, which is still 2 to 3 times, actually 3 to 4 times cover price on this particular book. And again, they're not really that limited. There's a bunch of them listed. People are paying $10 to $20 for raw copies, and you can get 9.8 for $40 to $60. So barely more than the cost to have it slabbed. Although the actual most recent sale was for $27 plus shipping. So why would you pay $20 for a raw copy if you could get a 9.8 at $27? I'm not sure, but that's kind of just where this book stands. Again, people were chasing that Air that it might be valuable but it wasn't really limited. But it has maintained just a little bit of value. So that is Spawn 293, the cover C, the Air version. And finally, at number 1 on the list is Superman Batman Annual number 4. And this is the first appearance of Batman Beyond in continuity. It's not his actual first appearance. His actual first appearance is in Batman Beyond number 1. And this was hit the list because there was news that they were going to try to make a Batman Beyond animated movie, or DC was going to try to make a Batman Beyond animated movie to kind of match the Spider-Verse movie that Marvel had, or that Sony had with back in December. So back then that caused this book to jump to $40 to $45. Now it is going for $25 to $60. So like, well, that's a really wide range. Mostly it's listed in the $30 to $50 range, but it just kind of goes, it's a little bit all over the place. I think a little bit on condition, and people are just paying a little more on buy it nows than they probably should occasionally, but that is, that's nature of the beast, I guess. But yeah, you could get it there were several sales in the $25 to $35 range. And there were several sales in the $50 to $60 range and a couple in between. So, again, do your research, know where prices are at before you hit that buy button. If you're shopping on eBay, currently listings for 9.8s in this book are all 300 plus. Sales are more like in the 250 to 200 range, so 200 to 250, but the listings are all in the 300 plus range. Again, just be patient. I think you'll get your opportunity if this is a book that you want. There's been no further news about that particular movie. As long as you beat the trailer, you're probably okay, so I don't see any reason to rush out and chase this particular one until you can find a deal you want. So with that, that's this week's list. Again, we were dominated by option news that really hasn't maintained, although those books haven't all come crashing down. They just haven't maintained the heights they were at. Had a couple of covers that didn't maintain. The Immortal Hulk train continues to chug along, particularly number 2. Not sure I understand that, but it keeps going, so I'll keep talking about it. So with that, that's this week's list. I want to appreciate you guys for joining me, and we'll talk to you later.